Embark on a transformative journey with my upcoming ebook, 5 Ways to Rise and Thrive. This guide is your gateway to personal and professional success, offering inspiration, motivation, and practical strategies to elevate every aspect of your life. Be one of the first to unlock these 5 fundamental pillars of greatness by joining the waitlist. Simply email john@johnmerkus.com, and not only will you go on the waitlist, but I'll send you by return email my emotional intelligence guide completely free. That's right, email john@johnmerkus.com to be on the waitlist for 5 ways to rise and thrive that's going to rock your world. Welcome back to Rise and Thrive Conversations for Greatness, the podcast where personal growth, motivation and inspiration illuminate the path to success. I'm your host, John Merkus, and if you've joined us for part 1, you already know the incredible journey and insights shared by our esteemed guest, Cheryl Lacey. Her profound perspectives on education leadership, the blend of personal and professional life, and her stories of resilience and determination left us eager for more. In part 2, we dive deeper into Cheryl's transformative work within the Board of Jewish Education in New York, a testament to her innovative approach to balancing faith with education. Cheryl shares an enlightening anecdote about her encounter with Jackie Collins, revealing the discipline behind success and how personal growth intertwines with our daily routines. Our conversation expands beyond the confines of education to explore the universal principles of success, autonomy, and the value we bring to every endeavour. Join us as Cheryl imparts wisdom on establishing clear visions, aligning with our goals, and the crucial balance of discipline and freedom that propels us towards greatness. Whether you're seeking inspiration for personal growth, strategies for motivation, or insights into achieving success, this episode of Rise and Thrive Conversations for Greatness promises to enrich your journey. Let's continue to explore how embracing our passions, committing to our goals, and cultivating meaningful relationships can lead us to a life of greatness. Prepared to be inspired as Cheryl Lacey guides us through the principles that have shaped her extraordinary impact on the world. Let's you and I take another step towards thriving in our quest for greatness.
Absolutely. And you mentioned New York earlier, and I didn't change the entire New York system. Let's get that clear. What I would love to, and I'm there tomorrow if someone wants to call me. No two ways about that. However, it was within the Board of Jewish Education. And so the whole New York Board of Jewish Ed is where I did a lot of my work. And that also was a wonderful place for me to understand and contextualise a lot of the principles that I talk about and that are in my book. And the reason for that is that within the Jewish faith, the school is divided into 2, the school day. So they have their faith, and well, this is back in when I was there, their faith, and then the second half of the day they had to squeeze in everything that all schools squeezed in across the whole day. So how do we do that? So I help them restructure how they managed the curriculum that was expected of them without losing their faith and the time for their faith during the school day.
Right, so that sounds like a pretty big challenge to face into and successfully meet.
But I'll tell you something really funny about New York. And you talk about the things that we do and our curiosities and so forth. And, being a writer, not full-time, but certainly love writing, I've always been curious about how other people approach their writing style. And when I was a teenager, I was a big Jackie Collins fan. I love Jackie Collins, and to this day I still say I'll write a book like hers one day. But we were living in New York, and she was actually doing a book launch. And so I was that thrilled. I went along and met Jackie and had my daughter with me, my 2 daughters with me. And I asked her about her approach to writing. And she said, well, I get up in the morning, every morning at 5 a.m. and I write for 3 hours. A lot of what I write gets thrown in the rubbish, but there is some little snippets of gold that are there that eventually become that book. And she gets on and goes about her day after that time. Unfortunately, she's not with us any longer. But what that, again, taught me was that discipline and making sure you have your own approach, and this is that autonomy again, your own approach to your craft or what it is that you're working with. And, trying to emulate that might work for some, not others. I know my partner, when I told him, he's like, this is great. So he does it religiously every day. Clifton gets up and writes. I can't do that. I'm not wired that way, albeit I'd love to. I go in full throttle and don't touch me for a month. I'm, getting this job done. So that's really important too, that we find our own way and we learn our own autonomous approach to whatever it is that we're passionate about.
Gotcha. And yeah, that discipline is really interesting because you need it if you've got big goals or if you've got things that you want to do, and those daily habits and the discipline to have those habits to be able to achieve. It's been coming up a fair bit for me lately in the things that I've seen and heard. So I'm really glad that you brought up about that discipline, because it can be a bit of a dirty word. It's considered hard, but I guess it depends why. There's that saying, if you've got a big why, you'll do whatever it takes, and maybe have that discipline. We talked a bit about discipline before in the carrot and the stick there. That seems to be a common thread here. But what's your experience and take on how to instill that discipline in others?
It's one of my principles, funnily enough, and the principle is honour, discipline, and freedom follows.
Oh, yes. I love that. Got to give us that one again. I love it, please.
Honour, discipline, and freedom follows. So just back when I said there about Jackie Collins, it's a great example, isn't it? She 3 hours, disciplined, wrote every day, and she was free then to carry out her other commitments for the rest of the day. But that discipline led to what her passion was, and that was writing and producing books. So I think that's a classic example of that.
It's a great context to operate out of. So then discipline doesn't become a dirty word, doesn't become a drudgery or a chore. It's something on the way to greatness.
And it's also, I suppose you could look at it, from another context as an example, and that is, playing a game, a sport that you love. And, if you know the rules of the game and everyone knows the rules of the game, then you're free to excel and, play that game well. And then if we take that to the greatest level, and that is, the rules around life and the law, once again, if we know what they are and we honour them, then we've got so much freedom.
Yeah. Yeah, I love your principles there. Have you got another one, or what's a couple of your favourites others you want to share, or do we have to read the books, or what's going on there? Because I love this kind of stuff.
Well, it's a bit of both, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, give us as much as we can, but if you want more, we definitely have to get the books.
Okay, so another really important one is really about home and the importance of home being that first frontier. But I'll take it back to another more important one, and that is around relationships. And, so we don't have partnerships with educators. We have relationships with educators. And so, again, just to give an example, if I said to you, well, you've taken your children to the dentist and, they've had to have a couple of fillings, and the dentist has said they've got to get off the candies and they've got to get off the soft drink and so forth. I don't think you'd go home and say, I have a partnership with my dentist to raise my children and have healthy gums, would you?
No.
Yet we use this term partnership in school education, and that puts a lot of pressure on educators to perform and work outside of their boundaries. And so we need to have healthy boundaries around what it is that their responsibilities are, and then really healthy bridges to support parents and families in places where, those, extra support is required. So there's lots of, my principles are really centred around that home school distinction and all around, the philosophy of everyone benefiting. I'm trying not to give away too much because I want people to...
No, that's fine, and I understand that. But what I'm hearing as well is it's not just confined to that arena or to that set of circumstances. It transcends that. Like we were talking about discipline and freedom. So that might be a principle to do with schooling or achieving things in that environment, but you can apply that to a lot of areas of your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It really is about life. And when I, first came down to questioning myself and really being clear about what I was thinking about in order to develop these principles and therefore, the first principles on education and schools of distinction. The big one, I mentioned it earlier, was really equality. And we talk about equality and equity. And I'm thinking, what is it at the end of the day? When we want equal opportunity, what does that mean? So I've spent a lot of time reading up on the history of education. And would you believe one of the first school was back in around 486 BC? So pretty interesting stuff when you start digging around. And for us, the important component here is that if we're going to think of schools going back that far and where we are today, what was the goal then? And it was, in fact, that school was established by a Jewish scribe, and he wanted to ensure fatherless boys had an equal opportunity that they were missing out on when, obviously those boys who had fathers had role models and supports. So we can bring that into the future, into where we are today. So for me, equal opportunity is that we actually all begin equal, and that is we're born to one biological male and one biological female. Regardless of how the birth eventuates, that is it. We cannot change that. A biological male, a biological female. And in fact, in my book, I talk about birth mothers and real mothers, and I got that wrong. And that was, I've learnt that actually since writing the book, that I used the wrong language. So biological mother, biological father, we're all fundamentally equal. That's it. It's what we do with our life and how we make decisions and choices around what affects us that the change evolves. And we can't demand that of anybody or expect that of anybody. It's up to ourselves to be responsible, and that's where discipline comes into.
Yeah. How do you mean about the difference between you said that the language wasn't quite right, and you've learnt that since you've mentioned that. What do you mean by that? What happened there?
Okay, so habitually, we through the adoption process, for example, you go through all sorts of very complex assessments and so forth. I was also on IVF for a number of years before adopting my two girls. So I've, been through quite a lot of, the governmental and, psychological things that you need to do to become a mum. And I picked up on and took for granted the language that I'd heard so many times before going through those processes. So they talk about birth mothers. And so I used to say to my girls, I'm your real mum, that's your birth mum. However, a birth mother today can be a surrogate, and the egg is not the egg of that woman, it's the biological mother. So there is a difference between the biological mother and the birth mother in that instance. So because I hadn't gone through that, I didn't consciously think about it when I wrote that little piece in my book around equal opportunity.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought about it at all until you mentioned it now. Then it makes sense when you explain it. A little bit like what you say, it's easy when you know. But now, thanks for explaining that, because I wasn't quite clear on what you meant by that. So you've had a mindset and such a drive to become a mother, to do whatever it takes to do that. First on the IVF, and I know that can be a not only expensive process, but a very emotional one. And then going through the adoption process as well, to go, I'm going to do whatever it takes to become a mother. What's some of the things that you had to break through to realize your goal of becoming a mother, because you achieved it?
Look, unfortunately, there are some, as you said, you mentioned finance, and that can inhibit the opportunity for many people. What I learnt through the process, become a mother regardless, no matter what, I don't believe I had that mindset. I desperately wanted to be a mother and wanted, obviously, for that success. But if it didn't come to me, then I also was very mindful that I had to have that there as well. So it didn't work with IVF. And so, many years of disappointment and frustration were part of that. So you've got to have a firm belief that you will do all that you possibly can. And certainly becoming a mother was what I wanted, but whether I got it or not, I had to be realistic about as well. So thankfully, for me, it did work out, and adoption was it. And every Mother's Day and Father's Day, we give thanks to the biological mums and dads of my children.
Mm-hmm. What I meant by that is you kept going to achieve your goal. So rather than, whatever it takes, that's one way to put it, I guess. But yeah, you kept going through the adversity, through setbacks, through good times and bad to have the life that you have now with called a family with a couple of daughters. So I think that's really inspirational when people keep going under those circumstances.
Yes, and that was also, another story here. One of the big driving forces behind these principles as well, because, and this is a story for another day, but in trying to support the families in my daughter's school community around an initiative that was being introduced, I was ostracised and denied access to my child by the very school that she was attending.
Wow.
So,
That's a story for another time, is it? Oh, because you've got us intrigued there.
it's a story for another time, and it's a huge driving force behind what I've been doing the last couple of years in particular.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, yes, I'd love to come back and talk to you about that. But the reason why I mention that is that, as you well know, what do you do for your children? What would you do, in times of troubles? And exactly what you said, you do what you can at all costs, and you just don't give up.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so many leadership principles in as well in what you're talking about. And I know you've got on your website, Make Your Leadership Extraordinary, and you've got 4 pillars, 4 areas. You're going to describe them a lot better than I can, but I really gravitated to that. And the vision and impact, vision alignment, realizing the vision and first principles. Can you take us through those things? Because I think they're going to be of interest to our audience, and I want to know more about them too.
Okay, so vision and impact. Essentially, when you're an educational leader, be it a principal or a school board member, as you have been, you have a vision for the school. Often it comes back to that whole vantage point that I talked about earlier. We have a vision and we set about achieving it before actually contextualizing the position we're already in. So what we do in that vision and impact is, okay, what are the disparities between where you are now and what your desired outcome is, what that vision is? And what that does is it enables us to look at any obvious problems that are there, but also work with a preventative hat on as well, and get really realistic around whose vision it is, because it's a school community. And if it's driven by a handful of people and we don't have everyone else on board, as you well know, there's going to be problems. Do we really want to add, more pain to a very busy schedule, or do we want to find other alternatives? So there's a whole raft of tips and tools that we work with to take that initial context and scenario to get a very clear picture of where the school is currently and where the community is currently, because we seep out past the school gate, and have a very clear framework from where we can begin to grow as a school community. What was the next one? Remind me.
Vision alignment. Now, I know in your context, because you live and breathe it every day, you are talking about a school community, but I can see how that could work personally and even in the corporate world as well. You want to know where you are before you can go. Like, you got to have a map when you're on a journey. I'm starting from here and I want to go here. So what's in between? What are the gaps? What do I need to do? What do I need to know about? What not? And then when there's more than one person involved, and you're talking about whose vision is it, can we get on board with that, or can I guess can there be other inputs into that so we all have a shared vision? Because I really like one of your sayings on the side. If you can describe your vision, your community can create it. And I was thinking about that as I read it, and I thought that can also work personally as well as in an educational system as well. If you can describe your vision and or your mission, I kind of use them interchangeably, maybe wrongly or rightly, and other people can easily describe that, then I think that you're on a bit of a winner, because it must make sense when it's easy and simple rather than massive complicated paragraph on what's going on that no one can either remember or repeat back to you.
That's true. And you're right in correcting me. Thank you. I mentioned school because we're going down that path, but working with education systems is really what this is about as well. And as a result of that, what we said earlier, we're actually working with communities of families, so it can be in any context that these are applied. Couldn't agree more. So it's
Awesome.
really important that that's been clarified. So thank you.
Oh yeah, no, the vision alignment was the next one. So I suppose when you have a look at what your vision's going to be and the impact of that, and then was that a bit what we're talking about together, having bringing people on the journey with us?
Yeah, so I talk in this instance, it's really about being very clear about who's doing what their responsibilities are in the first instance, which we've sort of discovered through that vision and impact, and what the impact will be on them when this vision starts to come to fruition, because we want everyone to take ownership of what they contribute to that vision. So very clear pathways that everyone's on board, they know what they're doing, we all know what each piece of the puzzle is, and we can not only work with it, but we're in a better position to support one another when things fall over. The really important part about this is that, if I can just quickly use a school context as the example here, we can ask of staff or families to do something for a vision for a school. And it could be as simple as having to, as you said earlier, put together a whole heap of policy documents. However, if that's going to require your time elsewhere and it's going to impact on your work life or commitments that you have to family, then you've got to take ownership of that. And you've got to work with how you communicate that to those others who aren't directly affected but are affected. So our vision is like a ripple in the pond. It affects people in so many ways that we forget to think about when we're excited about some big dream that we've got.
And the third part of that, realizing the vision.
So this is about making strategic adjustments along the way, so that what we're doing is, because we know where we're going, we're able to work cohesively to on a bit of a continuous loop, if you will, whereby we have the right tools and the right framework to be able to make adjustments along the way, but also pick up on opportunities.
I've worked in many agile environments, and that's part of it as well. So yeah, I love that you've got that in there. First principles is the fourth one. So we're back to the first principles.
Yeah, so that's we've talked a little bit about that today. So the first principles really, it comes back to our value, not just our values in what we believe, but the value that we bring to the workplace, or to the family unit, to the community, and being very clear that we either have those same values and respect each other's value, or agree on what we will apply, even if we perhaps disagree, so that we can remove the frictions and remain disciplined in fulfilling what it is that agreement means to us in the end to achieve that vision, our vision.
I like what you said there about bringing value, because what an awesome question to ask yourself in a lot of instances. What value am I bringing here?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, because
Yeah.
we're not always sitting around going, "Hey, yeah, I wonder what value I'm bringing here." It's like, oh, I'm just here.
It's so true. And, it can be as simple as, being really clear in the first instance about a position description and the value that brings. And, you would know in all of your environments that, You don't employ someone for the sake of it. They're a very important cog in that very important wheel. And, and for anyone to know that value and know that that value is respected and expected is really important.
Yeah, it's interesting about value. I saw a person describing to a younger person about value, and it was about them entering the workforce, and said, if you're getting paid $20 an hour, you've got to realize that you've got to make more than $20 an hour for the person that is employing you, because then you're creating value for them, and that's why they've employed you. So if you feel like you're being ripped off a bit because you're creating more value than what you're getting paid for, it's because you are. So he put it in a humorous context that way. But this keeps coming up to me, especially lately, about value. You want to be creating more value than what you're, taking away, so to speak, especially in that example.
That's terrific. And you know what? I'm going to pinch that. I think it's a wonderful analogy.
Yeah, because we think, well, I'm only getting paid this, so I'm just going to do this. And it's like, no, you've got to do more than that.
Yeah. It's a bit of that before and after tax thing, isn't it, that you've got to describe to your kids as they start work.
Yeah, the government's going to tax them out. Why? Well, we've got roads, we've got hospitals, we've got this, we've got that, and, that needs to be paid for by all of us.
Indeed.
Now, this is a podcast about conversations for greatness. We're having one, which I'm loving, but I'm really interested in how you define greatness and what it means to you personally.
Great question. And let me give it a little bit of thought before I answer that, because it's one that obviously you've thought about a lot yourself.
What I realise as you think about it, when I've asked guests and other people in my life this question, part of the reason I love asking the question is because it's different for everyone. Some people mention the greatness for them, and it can be mixed in with success or greatness, is doing something every day to get somewhere where you want to go. That's great. Greatness for other people, some people might go, when I feel grateful for what I have today and I'm in the present moment, that's where I feel great, and that's how I define greatness. Some people might say, I've achieved this massive goal, and that's how I define greatness. When I'm going for something big, when I get there, great, but it's about going there or shooting for something big, or as my wife said in the previous episode, shooting for the stars because the clouds will always catch you. These kind of things. So it's different for everyone. So I'm wondering what it is for you.
It is. It's a great question. And I have this notion that education and life are synonymous. It's all about change through people. And so to me, greatness is really about making sure that you really take every moment and opportunity, particularly in your interactions with others, to be greater. And that greater is to know a lot more today than what you knew yesterday.
Excellent. Oh, really, really a pleasure to hear. A pleasure to hear. Thank you for that, Cheryl.
Pleasure.
And I always like to ask my guests as well. I love music. It's had a big impact on my life, and I use that to help myself because, we're not always feeling great. We're not always upbeat and whatnot. We want to be, and sometimes we do our best work that way, and life's full of ups and downs, as we've talked about. And so I use music sometimes when I go, I want to be in a different state of mind. So I ask my guests, if you wanted to be in a different state of mind and get pumped up and motivated to take some action, is there a particular song or that you would listen to get you in that mode?
Look, I'm a terrible, guilty person when it comes to elevator music, I have to say. I put on music that I actually end up not being able to hear because I get so caught up in the moment that helps me, and I can dip in and out of it. If it's too noisy or I love the words too much, then I get distracted. So as long as it's in the background and I can disappear from that, then that's what works.
Right, no worries. And is there something that you might do or say to get you in a particular state? Let's say you've got a task that you need to do and you're thinking, or procrastinating or, whatever it is, but there's a small lack of motivation there. Is this, what would you do or say to yourself to get you motivated to tackle something?
Basically, suck it up and get on with it. The only person that's going to get this job done is you, so you better do it.
I like it. I like it. And like my friend Victor Purton says, a leader is the person in the mirror. So look in the mirror and go.
That is funny, because when Victor asked me about Australian leadership a few years back, and then he introduced his optimism initiative, and I talked to him about leaders in the mirror, people in the mirror, and I said to him, "You devil, you've taken that one from me." So we have to laugh about that. So he's a great guy. He achieves good things.
Yeah, he's right up my alley, and he's been on the show. Cheryl, I've really loved what we've talked about today. It's transcended education and personal lives, and you've shared some of the things that have happened to you in a way that is inspirational, and you're out there making it happen, which and making a difference, realizing relationships and people are the key to change. It's been fabulous to have you on the show. Really appreciate that you've been on here.
And thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun, and I really do look forward to talking to you again. Thank you.
Love to have you back on the show. Thanks, Cheryl.
Thank you. I had a great time.
Thanks for joining us on Rise and Thrive, Conversations for Greatness with John Merkus. Remember, you are loved, you are worthy, and you do matter. Embrace the journey of personal growth and motivation. Let's go out there and do something great. Follow or subscribe for more insights and inspiration every Tuesday. Until next time, stay awesome.